Good morning, Integrated Math 1. So this is going to be our last week of learning new material, and it's going to be our last week of new assignments. Any time after is going to be for you guys to make stuff up. So I encourage you guys to use the time after this week to go back and look to see if you've missed anything, and go ahead and do those so you can still get credit, as well as consider correcting things that you may have earned a low grade for. But in any case, let's go ahead and dive into our final section. I think we're just going to continue with proportions from last time. We're going to expand upon them and make them a little bit harder, but it's not going to be anything too bad. So it's just going to be a continuation of proportions. So as a reminder, a proportion is just an equation that's taking two fractions and saying that they're equal. And we can solve it by cross multiplying. So I'm going to do a bit of review here. This is actually an easy one, like what we did last time. I'm just going to insert a text box to the side here, and I'll highlight things as I go. So when you're solving a proportion, you're multiplying diagonally across and then putting an equal sign in between those two products. So one of my cross products here is going to be 3 and x. So I'm going to take those two products, 3 times x. I kind of want this to be bolded and maybe a little bit bigger. Here we go. And then the other cross product is going to be, let's see, let's do blue. Shall we do blue? Is that too dark? Yeah, that's a little too dark. Let's do a different color so you can really see it here. Let's do orange. Is that okay? Yeah, you can kind of see it now. All right. So my other cross product, which I've colored in orange, is going to be 4 times 9. And then in between those two cross products, you're setting them equal, okay? So you're just multiplying across the diagonal. And again, to reiterate, it doesn't matter if I put the 3 times x on the left versus the right. I could have put the 4 times 9 over here if I wanted to, and 3 times x here. It's all going to work out the same so long as you're multiplying correctly, and most importantly, putting them equal to each other. Once they're equal, you're just going to simplify. 3 times x is just going to give us 3x. I bring down my equal sign, and then 4 times 9 should give us 36. And then last but not least, we're going to take that 3x and we're going to solve for x by dividing by the 3. Okay, remember 3x means 3 times x. Inverse of multiplication is division. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to solve this equation for x here. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I must divide the 36 by 3 as well. And then I should get, as my final answer, x equals 12. So here's my final answer. I'll make that nice and big. So there's my final answer. So that's what we learned last time. You multiply across, set them equal, simplify, solve, and you should get the value of x. And sometimes we have to round. All we're going to expand upon today are proportions that look like this. So right off the bat, you probably noticed they do look a little different, and that is because we don't just have an x in one part of our proportion like we did here. See how it was just an x on the bottom? We now have an x plus or minus something. Here we have plus 1, and in this one we have minus 3. So we're going to start the same way. I'm going to highlight some cross products here. 6 and 8. And 2 is going to get multiplied with x minus 3. So all I'm doing is I'm identifying what two things I'm going to multiply. And I know what two things I'm going to multiply because they're going to be, again, diagonally across from each other. Let me go ahead and just add a new text box. That'll be the easiest, I think. So I'm actually going to start with the orange this time, just because I see that when I multiply these two together, it's going to have the part that's going to contain the variable, and I like to have my variable on the left side. Again, it doesn't matter if you start with the orange. I could start with the pinkish purplish color if I wanted to. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to go ahead and start with that part. So I know I'm going to take the 2. Let me bold this so you can really see, and multiply it. Let me make it a teeny bit bigger. I know I'm going to have to take this 2 and multiply it with this. And this is usually where students struggle, okay? All you do when you're doing this cross product, if your x has a plus or minus, you open a set of parentheses first, and then type that expression that we see, x minus 3, and then you close the set of parentheses, okay? So that's the only thing that's different for the proportions that we're going to be working with today. If you see a plus or minus sign, you put that part in parentheses, and the number you're multiplying with it goes on the outside. That's it. So as you can see, we're going to have to use the distributive property here. But let me go ahead and type my equal sign, and then the other cross product goes on the other side. And that's going to be 6 times 8. So on the side that has the parentheses, I need to use the distributive property. And again, the distributive property says take this number on the outside of the parentheses and multiply it to each of the inside terms. So my first product is going to be 2 times x. Well, that's just 2x. My second product is going to be 2 times negative 3, which is just negative 6. And again, I really encourage you to be using a calculator every time you do stuff like this. So that has simplified the left-hand side. All I need to do is simplify the right hand. 6 times 8 should give me 48. And now it is a two-step. I can solve this two-step equation by first undoing the number that is not touching the variable and then take care of what is. In other words, I need to get rid of this minus 6 first. And the opposite of subtraction is to add. I do that once to both sides. I still have a 2x on the left, okay? X is not by itself yet. And then I'm just going to double check with the calculator here. 48 plus 6 gives me 54. All right. Last but not least, I'm going to actually just take this entire equation, and 2x is the same as 2 times x, and I want to do the opposite of multiplication. So I'm going to divide by 2 to get the x alone. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. So if I'm going to divide the left by 2, I have to divide the right by 2. And x should now be alone, and 54 divided by 2 gives me 27. I just did that in a calculator. Here is my answer. So to recap, the only difference with these proportions that we're doing today is that this part that has a plus or minus, you're just going to stick it in parentheses. But then everything else is math that you've seen before. We've learned the distributive property. We've learned how to solve two-step equations and getting the variable by itself. So it's just setting it up that's going to be a little different. That's the only new part. Let's do another. I'm going to insert my text box, make it a little bit bigger and bolded, and I'm going to go into my proportion and highlight it. Okay, so I know that one of my cross products is going to be 4 and 8. So let me go ahead and highlight those so it stands out to me. And I know the other one is going to be 9 and x plus 1. So again, I'm just going to choose to start with the part that has the variable. That's my preference. Again, you don't have to start with that, but I think it just makes it a little easier if you're used to seeing equations written with the variable on the left. So I know that for my orange terms, 9 is going to get multiplied with the x plus 1. And again, before I write the x plus 1, I have to open the parentheses. If you actually don't write the parentheses, it will not come out correct. You need the parentheses, okay? So let me actually add that as a note here. You need the parentheses, okay? You need them. You absolutely need them. So I've got my orange terms good to go. Let's go ahead with the pink. 4 times, I don't want to highlight it. I want the text to be pink so it matches the way the other side's written. 4 times 8 is going to be the other. In the part that contains the parentheses, again, we're just going to use the distributive property. 9 times x is just 9x. And 9 times 1 is going to give us our second product, which is just 9. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. And on the right side, I'm going to simplify. 4 times 8 gives me 32. And again, it creates a two-step equation. So I look on the side that contains the variable. I need to get rid of the number that's not touching the variable first before I can get rid of what is. So the opposite of plus 9 is to subtract 9. And I'm going to do that once to both sides. Subtract 9 here, subtract 9 here. On the left, I still have a 9x. That 9 that's touching the x hasn't gone anywhere yet. And on the right, 32 minus 9 gives me 23. I just double checked with a calculator. All right, so that 9x means 9 times x, which is multiplication. I need to do the opposite of that. So I need to divide by 9. So I'm going to divide this side by 9. Oops, keep choosing the highlighter. There we go. And I'm going to divide this side by 9. X should now be alone. And if I divide 23 by 9, here's what I'm getting. I'm going to write it with a few decimal places. I get 2.5, but the 5 repeats, okay? So in the instructions here, it says round to the nearest tenth. I'm going to underline the tenths place. See that 5 that I just underlined? That's the tenths place. That's the number that I want to round, and then I want to get rid of anything else to the right of that number that I underlined. Okay, so everything that I've just highlighted, I want to get rid of that. So in order to round this underlined number properly, I need to look just to the right. I'm going to highlight that in green. If that green highlighted number is 5 or more, you raise the underlined number's score, meaning you bump it up by 1. If this highlighted number is 4 or lower, or 4 or less, you let this underlined number rest. Since it's 5 or more, I'm going to raise this score, which means x is going to equal 2.6, but then I drop everything to the right of that, starting with the green highlighted number. So this is rounded properly. Some of you guys were still struggling with rounding a little bit last time. It's definitely something that's good to know. You want to know how to round numbers. And there will be some that you'll have to round on your online learning slides, as well as your worksheet. Okay, so I'm just going to get this ready now because I know I'm going to need a text box. Okay, so 2 more examples and then we'll call it a day. So I know that one of my cross products is going to contain 7 and 9, and the other cross product is going to contain x plus 9 and 3. So I'm going to start with the part that has the variable. So I know it's going to contain x plus 9, and then I'm going to multiply it with 3. And again, when you're writing the part that has the plus or minus with the variable, you need to enclose it in parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. X plus 9 enclosed in parentheses. And this is what's getting multiplied with the 3. So as you can see, I'm putting the 3 on the end this time, and you might be wondering, does it matter? Could I have put the 3 at the front instead of at the end? And the answer is no, it doesn't matter. I could have put the 3 here if I wanted to. Same over here. See how I put the 2 in front here? I could have put the 2 in the back if I wanted to, so long as you're using the distributive property correctly. We call that the commutative property, if anyone remembers from the beginning of the year. Think of like when you commute from school to home. That distance is the same distance. It doesn't matter which place you start with. If you go from home to school and it's 10 miles, it's still going to be 10 miles when you go from school to home. Multiplication is the same way. It follows the commutative property. A times B is going to give you the same answer as B times A. Okay, so I've got my pink product set up here. Now, on the part that contains the parentheses, I'm going to use the distributive property, can't speak today, the same way as last time. I'm going to take this number on the outside, multiply it to everything on the inside. I'm going to start with the x. 3 times x gives me 3x. 3 times 9 gives me positive 27. I'm going to bring down my equal sign, and on the right side, I'm going to multiply. 7 times 9 gives me 63. Okay, so just like last time, it is creating a two-step equation. All proportions that kind of look like this where it just has one section that has a variable with a plus or minus, it's going to create a two-step equation like this every single time. So that means, just like last time, I have to get rid of this addition subtraction number first. It's addition, so I do the opposite and subtract it. I do it once to both sides. I still have a 3x on the left. Bring down my equals. 63 minus 27 should give me 36. And then 3x means 3 times x, so that's multiplication. So I want to do the opposite, which is to divide both sides by 3. Once to both sides. And I should get my answer. 36 divided by 3 gives me 12. And that's my answer for my variable. Okay. Last one. I'm going to insert my text box, make it bigger, bold it, and let's start highlighting. 6 is going to end up getting multiplied with 6. And then I've got an x minus 3 that will get cross-multiplied with this 3. So I'm going to start again with the part that has the variable. That's just my preference. And the part that contains the x needs to go in parentheses because of the minus sign here. And it's going to get multiplied with 3. This is going to equal my other cross product, which is going to contain 6 times 6. The part that contains parentheses, I need to use the distributive property, which means I need to take this 3, which is on the outside of the parentheses, and multiply it to each of these inside terms. 3 times x gives me 3x. 3 times negative 3 is going to give me a negative 9. Equal sign comes down, and if I simplify the right-hand side, 6 times 6 gives me 36, not 26. It is now a two-step equation. I need to get rid of the subtraction before I get rid of this multiplication. So opposite of subtract 9 is add 9. I do that to both sides. I still have a 3x on the left. Bring down my equals. 36 plus 9 should give me 45. Let me just double check that in my calculator. Yep, that's right. And then to get rid of this 3, remember that when it's touching, that means multiplication. So to get rid of it, I'm going to divide, which is the opposite. Divide this side by 3. Divide this side by 3. And now x should be alone. 45 divided by 3 is going to give me 15. I didn't have to round that one. And there's my final answer. Okay, so online learning slides, as usual, will be due Wednesday at 2 p.m. And then an interactive worksheet will be due Friday at 2 p.m. Okay, reach out if you have any questions. And as is usual, don't forget to click Turn In when you're ready for me to grade it. Take care, guys.